Welcome to In the Flow with your hosts, Amy and Laila,
where we dive into all things intuition, spirituality, and the behind the scenes of two intuitive channels.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to In the Flow with Amy and Laila. We're so happy you guys are here with us today. And if this is your first time, we hope you enjoy the episode. And we would love for you to give us a few thumbs up, hearts, stars, a review, whatever episode and podcast app you are tuning in with. So, how are you today, Laila?
Good. We're just running over from our mentoring that we had with Soulwise LA. So we're kind of on the roll. We have some of our friends here with us today. So I am feeling good, ready to go.
I am too. And I'm trying to recall exactly how we jumped into these conversation that you and I had last week, but then we said, hold up, let's just return to it for an episode so that our community can really feel what we have to share here. So,
Yeah.
the first topic that's coming through was about fear and trusting. I feel it was like fear and trusting. And when I say that, I'm already feeling like, whoo, it's a charge. If
Mhm.
you're one who's empathic and you can feel energy, then you might feel the fear of others and think it's your own. Or
Yeah.
you might recognize it and be like, oh my gosh, this is so uncomfortable. But the one thing that I always go back to is life is life, and there's a lot of contrast here. So,
Mhm.
how can we move through fear, whether it be ours or somebody else's? And I like to return to that space of light within, the peace within, and ask, whoever I'm working with, is it Jesus? Is it an ascended master, an archangel, to be with me while I move through that frequency? And do
Yeah.
you recall I don't even know if you recall the exact experience. Was it when we're talking about seeing clairvoyant visions, maybe? There was
Yes.
something there,
That was
right?
it. And being afraid of opening up your psychic abilities, especially your clairvoyance, because what if I see something, and then what will happen, and how that is a big fear for a lot of people. I mean, I honestly was afraid too, of if I see something, what am I going to do? It's this feeling of all of a sudden I'll feel controlled. Like, will I be controlled? And that is something that I've had to work through and always will be working through this lifetime in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it is something big. And so I always like to go back to when I had stories shared with me about this particular Claire gift. I had not had any negative experiences with it that made me feel fearful or hold back, but it was stories of others. And so that kind of did put me on pause for a minute. And then I had to set up some boundaries and reestablish with my team how I would like to work with this kind of gift. And so when we talk specifically about clairvoyance and fear that can come through with it, they will show me more like cartoon images if it's
Yeah.
something that's pretty alarming. And I really appreciate that. So I get symbology, or I'll see cartoon images, or sometimes I just see kind of like a shadow pressing on, like, I don't even know, it's like the dimension, like the veil between this
Yes.
dimension and the other. And
Yeah.
that's when I know, oh, that's some kind of something we don't want to deal with. And that's in my clearing sessions. But when it comes to readings, we'll say, and maybe there's an outcome that doesn't look so beautiful or something had happened in the past, they will gently give me those visions. So I had felt that, okay, if things come through that alarm me, I already know that it's probably not a message from my guide because they don't speak to me in that way.
Yeah.
But I know for some people who just naturally had visions or are seeing those who'd crossed over, that can be a thing to see how their life ended.
Yeah.
That can be really alarming. And I'll just preface again for anybody who's new. I don't typically work as a medium where I'm
Mhm.
communicating with departed humans. So that experience I don't have a lot, but I'm sure like you've heard many stories, or maybe you've had some in that way.
Yeah. So what's interesting for me, and I kind of want to go back to this as well, like through childhood, I had a lot of scary images. This was before I knew what I was experiencing. I could
Mhm.
feel energy, and I felt like I saw scary images. And so for me, the fear was I might see something if I open it up more. But I actually haven't really seen scary stuff when I've been connecting in intuitively or psychically or anything like that. Even with mediumship, I always see how a person dies and I watch it, but it's not scary. I also think the fact that I worked on like a critical care floor, I saw death very frequently and was a part of helping and the resuscitation. So a person passing necessarily doesn't make me afraid. It was more like those thoughts and those beliefs that are really like pushed out through stories and just like, those big egregores that kind of grow of the story of, different kind of entities. And so what I noticed, it was more my own mind thoughts that would be confused of what I was experiencing that would then create an image that I felt was something purposely coming my way when it actually wasn't. It's more of a belief within myself, a fear within myself of spoken oral words, then some ancestry of beliefs that then created that to be an image. So for me and my seeing, it was never fearful seeing. It was more when I experienced an energy that maybe I felt and I didn't understand and I didn't understand how to understand it. And
Mhm.
that's why developing your spiritual abilities, your psychic abilities, how to tap in with your angels or Christ consciousness is all very important because it helps you to start to discern what is this energy really? Is it actually something scary? Typically, no. It's just I don't know what it feels like. It feels different, and my brain is going to create an image to what I connect to fear or the dark or something like that. And so that's what I kind of found was happening for me and probably is happening for a lot of different people who are afraid of seeing and they see scary things, but I don't really see people see scary things psychically. I know I'm just kind of rolling here. But it's really based also on your belief system. What do you
Mhm.
believe? Do you believe that these energies have the ability to have control over you, or they're present, or they're not? Because there are certain people who don't see. Can I go down this road?
Sure.
We can always edit, right? Who don't see entities that we connect with like hell or demons or anything like that. They don't see it at all because it's not in their belief system. They're not
Yeah.
afraid of it. They don't see it. They don't sense it. They may see other things, but it's also based upon what you actually believe. So a intense energy can be perceived 1,000 different images based off of your belief system. And so for me, moving through fear, as I've moved through fear, I have realized that getting to that neutral point, feeling this sensation, my body really reacts. I usually get like heat flashes and I get like feeling overwhelmed, like I can't breathe. Getting neutral, always Christ consciousness is the most beautiful energy for me to connect into, to remain neutral, remain in my own power, and then to call in the guidance. I always call in the archangels, obviously, but Christ energy is really beautiful
Mhm.
for that. And then it's afterwards. Sometimes it's hard in the moment. You just kind of need to actually get safe again. Your body needs to feel safe again. And so it's creating safety. It's doing whatever you can do. And there's a couple of modalities I do to create safety in that moment. Then it's like, what was that fear showing me about myself and what I believe about myself? Because the only way it can rattle my cage or my chains is if I had chains in the first place. And
Yeah.
so it's just shaking it. It doesn't mean that it's good and or bad. If it can be in how we perceive it, but really sometimes you have to have that dark shake you a little bit, that scariness for you to see something that you weren't going to see. If it was just all butterflies and love and light and all that stuff, I would never have to face that because I would never be challenged within me. And so when you get to a point where you continue to see it and allow it, well, not allow it, but you face the narrative that you might be unconsciously running. At
Mhm.
that point, you can see it as a gift. And when you can start seeing things as a gift, not inviting it into your life, but I'm not inviting it. So if so, it's okay. Any life situation can be seen as a gift in some way for deeper spiritual involvement because maybe we've been calling in a deeper spiritual involvement. I just went off a complete little tangent there. This is big for me in my life. So it's all connected. But yeah, so typically I'll say this: my guides don't show me scary images. I've never seen scary images when working with spirit. It's only my unconscious and my brain creating thoughts of what it doesn't understand.
Yes, and so some people will notice that they have a fear come up, and I love what you said about it's an opportunity for healing. That's what I was feeling, because if this fear or any particular vibration that comes up and it's a consistent pattern, maybe it's sorrow or grief or jealousy, whatever it might be, and it feels like it's so intense, then it's an opportunity to say, "Wow, why does this keep showing up in such a
Mhm.
way?" And maybe you notice other people aren't having the same response in the same situation or something similar to it. Then I like to go a bit deeper and say, gosh, is this like ancestral? Is this something from my childhood that I picked up from my family, or going way back further than that? Is it past life? Or is it something in the collective that I'm noticing? And once we get an idea about that, then we can listen to the energy if it has something to share. I always like to be like, okay, why is it coming through and what do I need to learn from it? Or why am I feel like saying right now, why am I in a contract with it? Because that's what it feels
Mhm.
like. Like we keep showing up, we're having this interaction, me and this energy from lifetime to lifetime or year to year. Why? And what is my responsibility in this? And how can I move forward by healing it? So, fear is one of those things, but I love it that it's an opportunity for us to shine light on it. And so, I have found like people would be afraid of things that they didn't have resources to support them in that whole interaction. So, for example, people that are afraid of channeling, and I'm like, okay, you can be afraid of it, but wouldn't you rather be educated on it and then make a decision from that space with all the information, at least more information than what you have? And I understand that we have our own experiences, our own realities, and how we were raised and everything like this too. So I always find it interesting when some people are so against something and somebody else is so for it. I'm like, well, where's the medium? Like, where's the middle ground so I can make my own discerned decision here? And when there's an emotion that gets tangled into it, whatever it might be, then I can say, okay, let's just go back to neutrality and look at it from a different
Mhm.
perspective or space. And I can't exactly remember how we jumped into, we were going to bring this through to talk about it, but I just feel like we wanted to talk about empowerment and healing so we can move through things with clarity,
Mhm.
clarity of mind, and also the energy of our heart, like a peaceful knowingness within inside. And so I find when we're working with the public or when we're in our own everyday experiences and we're interacting with other people's energies, it's so important to know our own energy first so we can say, oh,
Mhm.
wait a minute, maybe I recognize that frequency, but I wasn't feeling it 5 minutes ago. So now I'm picking up on the fear of somebody else. And
Mhm.
when you get a whole group together that starts to feel a certain way or has a certain belief, it can snowball. So it's nice to be able to just remember who we are, first of all, and able not to get pulled into things that can pull us out of alignment or off of our path. Um, the other thing we were talking about, we started to flow into spiritual ego, and this is a big one.
Yeah.
How would you describe for people that like are really new to this whole concept? How would you define spiritual ego and maybe like give an example of it?
Well, spiritual ego, just like ego, is very elusive and it is very hard to see what is spiritual ego because at first you take it just as this is what I'm here to do. I'm stepping into this. And so it can be very confusing. Um, Spiritual ego is a way in which we utilize the ego to almost overinflate our importance or spiritual importance, sometimes with ourselves and or others. And there is no person in this world who doesn't have spiritual ego, who doesn't have ego, right? It's natural part of the evolution. It's just becoming aware of it. So something I can connect in with spiritual ego is when people get really obsessed with their mission here on earth. I'm here to heal. I'm here to bring in this next frequency. I'm here to save, these people. I'm so tired of these people who are, muggles who don't understand, blah, blah, blah. And when we get to that point where we all of a sudden feel as though and this comes in with the star seeds, this comes in with the connection to channeling, it comes in with my ability to be a psychic me, all these things, if done out of neutrality and out of a need to feel good enough, will elevate that to now spiritual ego. And that's why it can trigger some people, because they'll utilize it out of a sense of, all of a sudden, now I'm worthy, I'm important, so I need that, and I need a mission to make my life make sense. When really what a lot of people need is more to be aware of their own triggers, their own shadow, what they're denying, where they're not holding their own boundaries internally and externally, how to actually love themselves and speak their truth. And they don't need this huge collective mission as their point of light. That's going to happen naturally by you healing yourself and listening to yourself and loving yourself. But when we anchor ourselves to a certain spiritual persona or belief of worthiness, instead of anchoring it into our own heart, then it can get a little convoluted, because nobody's here to save anyone. I actually was like, oh, like when I found out my connections and like I started channeling like the one of me, I was like, oh, what? I'm supposed to do something big with this. And it can get you to a point where you're just looking, where do I throw the dart? Because I need a place to go. What's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? And you get desperate. And I know what that feeling feels like. And what we have to do at that time is go, okay, like I'm not going to save, I'm not here to save anyone, because I'm over here drowning. And the only thing that I'm keeping myself afloat with is the air of I'm important or worthy now in my lungs. And that quickly deflates out. And you can't hold that. The CO2 is going to build up. You're going to have to breathe. So it's really being aware that if you, yeah, so I think I already kind of spoke about that, but the more we anchor into ourselves, what does this mean about me? How can I heal me? How can I know more of who I am? How can I be fine if I live my entire life and only work on me and love me, versus if I am known by millions of people around the world that my life in both ways is incredibly important, incredibly healing, and helping to do this collective mission. And it's not anchored on a sense of approval, affirmation, or a title to make me feel good enough. And I think that's why, it's like, yeah, it's good to know about our origins and star seeds and like what other past lives. But if it makes you feel all of a sudden good and worthy, it's not that that's not okay, but just be aware of that. Why does that make me feel good all of a sudden or worthy enough? Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. There's so much here that I could just like go into. So, one is the way that we respond and how that affects others. So, if we look at ourselves as better than, or people worship other like leaders or gurus or whatever, or one particular modality or way of, that quote, it's like we're all helping each other get to the end. There's so many different paths and ways to get there. And so this is different than discernment, because discernment, we need to know in neutrality what's appropriate for us. But if we're judging others because they're eating meat or wearing this color black, like I've heard that, healers and channels should only wear white. Okay, well, let's really break it down. So I'll break it down for y'all right now. We like to wear black because it's comforting. It's a protective color and it makes us look good on camera. No. Talk about the ego. But it's comforting. I like to wear black a lot of times, and some people were like, only like gurus should only wear white. I'm like, oh my gosh, I went through all that with my religion. Color is color, and I get it. But if we start to judge people for silly, just like things like that, then we have to like really check ourselves, right? Like, why am I judging somebody? Why is it even my business?
Yeah.
But there's a whole approach to this where I'm going like how we feel about ourselves, and then also how we feel about others. And so it can go in both ways. So the spiritual ego, I've seen people get a really big ego because they're following this guru
Mhm.
or this diet or this way of meditation. And anybody else in the spiritual community that doesn't align with that, there's something wrong with them.
Mhm.
I've heard that and I'm just like, whoa, that's like so far from unity and a collective mission. That's such a separation here.
Yeah.
It kind of kind of blows my mind when I see that. I'm like, what in the world? And so that's different than saying, well, something really feels out of alignment here. You know what
Mm.
I mean? And so that's where we go back into our own frequency, our own alignment, and what works for us. And the Council of Light, I know, like when I first channeled them, and they brought through their first message in Sedona back in 18, and they said something along the lines of, "You're not here to save the world."
Mm.
And I was like, "Ooh, that's gonna ruffle some feathers." Because all these light workers that, like, had this inflated ego, "I'm here to save the world. I'm here to da 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 da." It's like, "Really? We're all here to, like, work together as we're called." And I really much, like, honor everybody in their path, and I'm in my particular place that I'm in, and it might change in a month, a day, next year, like, who knows, right? But we're here to live our life first and foremost, and then step up when we're given opportunity if we choose to. So nobody is like higher than one another when we all come together in love and we're working as a community and a collective and sharing our experiences. But I loved how they said that because even prior to that, I did a post years ago on social. I forget what the actual post was, but it was somewhere along the lines about personal care and
Mm.
making sure that we get that so we're not always giving so much and we are then drained. Like you said, then we don't have any air to breathe. And the somebody responded, it was something along the lines of, "You're not here to save everybody."
Mhm.
And this person responded, "Yes, I am," and, like, was so mad at me. Like, they were so mad at this post, and I was just like, "Wow, I don't know who you are, but good luck," that's a big burden to put on ourselves, right?
I mean,
So, come
yeah. I
on.
mean, didn't Christ try to take all of the energy in that story of the world and look what like where are you at now if you still hold that belief? How's your body? Are you
Yeah.
surviving and thriving?
Yeah, I was like, wow. So that's why I love to empower people and give information and always be like, hey, this is what worked for me. And I love learning from other people. And so the spiritual ego is a way where we can come like that. And we can, even if we say,
Mhm.
this is working for me, I'm so grateful that that's working for you. And we all have a way of it. And I just put the line, like I do draw a line of discernment when I know that they're influenced by something that isn't working in light, and there's so many ways to work in light. And if you have somebody that's kind of stepping out of alignment and they're a personal friend or family member, you can express to them, like, hey, I'm concerned about this or whatever. And there's a gentle way to do it. But I don't feel like that's ego. I feel like that's just being discerning. So with everything, it's kind of like a fine line, or once you get the balance and you can really flow with it. But I've seen people get into spiritual ego so much that it's kinda taken them for a ride, and
Yeah.
that is when it's, beings or a thought or collective thinking or something out there that's kind of pulled them out of their own frequency and
Mhm.
out of their own alignment and out of responsibility for their choices. Because then we can get into spiritual bypassing.
Mhm. 100%. And I thought it was interesting what you brought up about just the judgment of other people and their practices too. It's all about honestly what makes you feel aligned and what's spiritual and not. And me and you have gone back and forth on this of like it's big for me like anything can be spiritual based upon how you experience it. And so,
Yeah.
can it be spiritual like I talked about like eating a bean burrito, listening to some music that might not be, chanting and watching the Real Housewives? For me, yes. I literally after we do our whole thing, I'm gonna be cracking up watching that and be like, man, this is great. And my energy is raised. I have a great vibration. But some people are like, oh, I can't believe you watch that. Why not? I have such it just boosts me up. I just love it and I crack up. I think it's so fun. So it's all about what for the other person works for them to keep them in a vibration that feels nourishing for them, and that the judgment of what is spiritual or what isn't spiritual already shows that you're working within the shadow and you're pushing things into the shadow and you're not staying in that neutral kind of energy. And then, spiritual bypassing is when we kind of stay only anchored into that love and light. Like, I only want that energy and I can only see that energy within myself. And what happens is you kind of have a separation of self to mental self, and you're not actually flowing like, and you can see it in the energy field too. So I wonder how
Mhm.
that shows to you. But I'll see people really beefy up top, real mental. My guides will show like this big muscle man with really skinny legs and like skinny, and it goes down, meaning we're not balanced in what we're receiving spiritually or mentally or our thoughts versus what we're actually like allowing ourselves to feel in our physical body. And anytime we spiritually bypass, we're just like depositing coins in the bank of our shadow that gets larger and larger and larger and larger, whatever you're not willing to see or whatever you won't feel because it's not spiritual. Um,
Mhm.
it actually just creates then a radiating effect that it loops out and it comes back through another person, through a situation, an event, through those scary thoughts that I would always see in my head. And I would think it was something else, but really it was my own belief that I wasn't able to see that came and kind of shook my chains, skipping leg day, that made me become aware of what I was unable to see within myself. So love and light is great at first, and then it's like love and light and the dark is both beautiful, and remaining neutral to know that almost like there's this fear that if I look into that dark side, I don't know that it will take you over. And it's like that's that next level of self-trust, that next level of I can be neutral right here and see that both are there for me to learn. And when I skip over it, then it's just accumulating in that bank for an eventual deposit one day where it's going to come back around. And I'll get a conversation where like I've done everything right, I'm doing all the things, I'm doing all of this, but why is this experience happening? It's like sometimes it's that energy that still hasn't been truly seen, and we've been bypassing a little bit, that wants
Mhm.
to be seen because you're calling for an up level. Well, if you want to up level, then we need to talk about this, that we haven't fully allowed to be seen.
Yeah. I think it's about being honest with ourselves first, right? And knowing we're only human. So if there's something uncomfortable, let's talk about it. Get a friend, a therapist, go in meditation, talk about it, work it out, and know we're not meant to be perfect. So when something comes up that we're afraid of, like, oh no, that means I'm not good or
Mhm,
whatever, like, okay, let's dive in, let's look at it because that's a human judgment, anyways.
mhm,
From a soul experience, we have all kinds of experiment experiences. And if we feel out of alignment, then it's just about getting back into alignment. Some of the spiritual bypass that I've seen over the past couple of years would be people that say, well, I'm doing everything that I should be doing textbook,
mhm,
but then like maybe they step out of alignment in one or two places and then they still give themselves like gold stars. And I think it's important to feel proud of ourselves and to be really honest, but they take those things and they say, well, that's okay because I'm doing all of this.
mhm,
It's like making excuses for certain things because I'm doing all of this. And it's kind of like we need to really just be balanced and honest about it and what's coming up in the now moment. And then also, if you feel clear and clean about something and it doesn't go with the status quo, it doesn't line up with what other people are saying, that's also an opportunity for you to say, well, this is my path,
mhm,
right? And then we kind of talk about, well, then look around and how is your life flowing? And really, if you want to give it a try, give it a try, but don't be afraid to go back and correct things or redo things or start over. But I got to witness something wild last year where people were making excuses like, well, we're soul family, so it's okay because we're going to take care of it in the afterlife. Doesn't matter if I hurt them now, we'll take care of it later. And I was like, are you kidding me? No, I don't. I like would not want to be your soul family if
oh
you're
yeah.
taking that approach. Like, what's important is right now, and everything, like we talked about on our last episode, was everything ripples out.
Mhm,
Everything ripples out and it will boomerang back to us. So, it is important to be very clear and clean about what comes up and just really discerning about how we show up, like how are we navigating through the information And I love to have people that I can trust and just, tell me, like, am I wild here? Does this, am I stepping out
Mhm.
of alignment? Does this make sense in this dimension and the other dimension? So I think the spiritual bypassing and the spiritual ego really can go hand in hand because it's making excuses, and people get so rigid and they get so fixated on this one path that that's the only way and everything else doesn't matter or it
Mhm.
doesn't hold any weight. And then there becomes a judgment within the self about their own self or others. And I just think it's like really important for people. And I'm getting this coming through. Like, it doesn't matter how many followers people have on social media or how amazing this author or public speaker is. If you don't resonate with them, you don't resonate with them. Like, I always just feel, and having been on social for so long, I'm just gonna have to say some people buy their followers, like, some of that isn't even legit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Don't align with people because it's a popular person or
Mhm.
thought. You really need to tune in with your heart, and you really need to tune in a quiet space and just feel into the information or feel into the energy around the delivery of the information, we'll say.
Yeah. And discernment, neutrality is key. I love everything you said. And just really feeling into what's truth for you. And it can shift at any point, just like you said. And
Mhm.
somebody said, finding a community that can be a good sounding board. Yes. And while being able to speak to someone else and have them be a sounding board, it's like I'm using them just as a mirror back to me, but they'll never be what writes my story. They'll just help me when in the past I would hold on to what people said because I didn't know myself. And so the more we get to know ourselves in this work, we know who we are, we know our energy. We do that by connecting into our own guidance, our own higher self, our own heart. Who is Laila as I'm experiencing her right now? What does her energy feel like? What does the soul that's animating me feel like? I can then take guidance from other people, and they don't have the ability necessarily to navigate my path, but they help me with my directional ability. And I go, okay, yeah, I already have been receiving this through my own intuition with my own guides. And that is very helpful to receive back. But then sometimes we get to a point, Amy, where we're asking everybody for a sounding board, and
Yeah.
we're not trusting ourselves as well. And so it's really a fine balance of, having your own awareness of how you desire to feel, but then you can always put it to someone else and see how they feel about it. But most people are going to build you up. Most people are going to tell you what you want to hear, even in the spiritual community a little bit. So you have to kind of be aware of that too.
Yeah, especially because there's so many kind people that would feel kinda, like,
Yeah.
bad for just saying what they really feel like they wanna say is that, "No, something's off here."
Yeah.
So that's a whole skill set in itself for particular
Mhm.
people in our community that really are kind-hearted, but it's a nice thing to do to let people know, "Ooh, something's off. I'm only having, like, your best interests at heart here, and I'm not saying I'm 1,000% right, but I'm just saying something feels off, and I encourage you to, like, look into that a little bit
Mhm.
more," and have
Yeah.
those conversations. And then there's that wounding that can happen, but the more healed we are, we won't be offended. I'll actually be like so grateful. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, okay,
Mhm.
we're all learning along the way. We're all learning along the way, especially when we're new, when we're in apprenticeship or we're in mentorship sessions. We're in like a student
Mhm.
teacher thing, which to me is just me sharing with you what I've experienced.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like, you know what? That's actually a great sign of love and care and consideration just to share
Mhm.
with somebody, hey, maybe there's a better way or a cleaner way, but
Mhm.
it's really no judgment on the person themselves. I would say my discernment comes in when maybe I've expressed, oh, I'm not comfortable with this, and they want to go in that frequency. And I'm like, that's your choice. And I wish you the absolute best. And I'm going to go in this frequency. So it's time to
Mhm.
separate. But I just think it's a whole path and a whole process for everybody, and it comes back to respect for ourselves and respect for
Mhm.
others. So, yeah, we gotta we gotta touch on the fear that we wanted to talk about, and then the spiritual ego, and then spiritual bypass came in. Is there anything else that's coming through that you wanted to touch on today?
We hit on some a triple three, a trifecta. So I think that's a nice little package there that really could each have their own episodes themselves and could really go into. Um, no, I think that is a great sum up of everything that we kind of want to touch on, and some of that shadow side of spirituality that we can be so afraid of. Like, am I spiritually bypassing? Am I spiritually egoic? Am I dealing with fear? And the thing is everyone's going to have a yes at some time, some moment, to a
Mhm.
varying degree or other. And is that okay for me? And am I safe in knowing that? And can I also make a decision that I want to show up differently by focusing on my own energy and learning more about myself? The more you learn about who you are, how you interact with the world, your beliefs, what made your beliefs, how you wish to desire and interact with the world, the more simple it will get on how you are to navigate this world. We're usually navigating with outside wisdom and direction. And if we could go within and understand ourselves, then the navigation and the paths go to 1,000 to just a couple that really make sense to what you wish and desire. And these three stops of this trifecta are going to show up, and you're going to be able to move past them and not be afraid because they show up.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So if you guys have any insights, thoughts, or questions on this topic, we'd love to chat with you about it on our next mentor session. So you can join us at Soulwise LA. It's open for everyone, and we have community conversations in a library full of information. But one of the cool things is we'll be doing our mentoring every month. And so we look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. And we want to thank you for joining us on In the Flow with Amy and Layla. If this is your first time, there's other episodes for you to tune into, and you can find us through the links below. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.